Told y'all, blinking, you might miss this one. I turned out to be very, very right about that. Welcome on in. This is season 7, episode 31 of the Outlap F1 podcast. It's our 2025 Italian Grand Prix review show. We're a couple days a little bit behind, but that's all right. We're all good here, but no big deal. You've got Andy and I'm along with Cody tonight. Cody, it's been just a couple days since I've seen you. I saw you a little bit over the weekend, but how's it been going since then?
It's been going well. I have been rolled into my house after a enormous, delicious dinner and trying to fight off the food coma. But there was some frustrating things to me in this Monza race and some very exciting things too. So I'm sure that'll keep me awake. And yeah, you definitely were right on with the blinking you might miss it. Record-settingly right. In fact.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of records fell. This was one of the fastest qualifying laps in history. It was one of the fastest races it is the fastest race now in Monza history. But that doesn't mean that there's not a good stuff that we could dig our teeth into a little bit and get at this race. And we're going to do that in just a little bit. But if you have found our show, as always, welcome along. We are glad you are here. You can find us sometimes on Blue Sky, on X, on Instagram, Discord, Reddit, and of course here on YouTube. One handle for all those spots at Outlap F1 Podcast is the handle for all that. If you enjoy what you're watching or you like what you're hearing, if you're on YouTube, you can leave either a like or a subscribe button. You can click one of those. That'll help us out a little bit. If you're on your favorite podcasting app, if you want to leave us a 5-star review, what does that all do? That just helps our stuff, this show, come up a little bit better in F1-related search results. If you'd like to email the show, you can feel free to do that. outlapf1@gmail.com will get your thoughts to us. Thank you so much to our continued supporters who continue to support the show. Thanks so much to Dean Warwick, Yuri Dolchester, Paul Weaver, Quentin Warden, Kevin Kelly, Regan Stanzik, Timothy Brown, and of course, Jonathan Scott. If you'd like to add your name to that Hall of Fame and get your name shouted out, all you got to do is find our anchor page in our show notes. Leave us a tiny little donation, $1 or $5. You can leave us $1 and we'll put your name in the Hall of Fame. We'll put you on Mount Rushmore of the Outlap F1 podcast. Doesn't have to be much. And you don't really have to do it either if you don't want to. That's totally cool. We're just glad you're listening. But if you wanted to do that, what does that do? It helps us just keep our equipment as up to date as we can in this ever-changing tech world where it just seems things always work a little bit different than sometimes you might expect. But anywho, enough about all of that. We will transition now back to our Monza weekend. We'll start with our headlines of the day. Cody, I'll let you go first. What you got?
I propose a calendar change. We alternate between Monza and Canada for the rest of the season. That is about the only thing that would win Max Verstappen the championship at this point. And I would be here for it because it would be great. We'd see Max winning by 20 seconds every other week, just like the old days, and McLaren would actually slip back enough. But alas, it is not the case. I just need to revel in this weekend and the fact that Max actually was able to put it together with Red Bull and put together a dominant victory for really the first time all year for him. Yeah,
he was great. We will definitely talk about the greatness or the good stuff that Max did all weekend long. My headline of the day is apparently I need to trust my instincts more because right before the preview show, I was like, I always pegged this was the weekend where I would say if Max was going to get one, this was going to be it. And I came off of it and I should have just gone with it because apparently when I have these little vibrating things in my spinal column when it comes to Formula One, they tend to go right. So I should have done that. I should have trusted my feelings. And I just didn't do that. And I should have because Max was every bit the thorn in the McLaren side that I thought he was going to be when I looked at this race on the calendar when you started to see where he was strong. Since Canada, I figured, well, this would be the next one that I kind of looked at and said, uh-oh. For my McLaren fandom anyway, but I was proven right. I just didn't trust it in the predictions, but we'll cover those a lot later on in the show. All right, before we get into the race that blinked and went awry in 73 minutes, we will talk a little bit about the qualifying. And let me see if I do have. I got it. It was here. Why did I lose it? Why did it go away? Oh, recap. Hang on one second. There we go. All right, now the music is playing. We will start with our qualifying, which saw going out in P20, the Racing Bulls' fortunes were a bit turned around, especially from Zandvoort. That dubious distinction went to Liam Lawson. P19 was Pierre Gasly. P18, Franco Calapinto. P17, other team struggling a bit. This was also expected. Lance Stroll in the Aston Martin. P16 was Isaac Hadjar. So both Racing Bulls out in Q1. P15 was Esteban Ocon. P14, Alex Albon. This was a surprise, especially given Williams' form on Friday. P13 was Carlos Sainz. So again, also a negative surprise there. P12 was Nico Hulkenberg, and P11 was Oliver Behrman. The top 10 from 10 to 1. P10, Yuki Tsunoda. Hello, other Red Bull. Where have you been? Nice to see you, sir. P9, Fernando Alonso dragging the Aston Martin, whether it was good in that condition or not, but he got it into Q3. Good going there. P8, one of the stars of qualifying yet again. Gabby Bortoleto is putting together a hell of a rookie season, and nobody's really talking about it. But kudos again in Q3 in another different type of track. So good on you, Gabby Bortoleto there. P7 was Kimi Antonelli. P6 was George Russell. P5 was Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari, although he did have that silly grid drop. P4 was Charles Leclerc. P3 was Oscar Piastri. And P2 and P1 separated by less than a tenth of a second, but it was Max Verstappen in the Red Bull taking the pole over Lando Norris. Max's time, a track record. Lando's time was a track record, and then it was bested by Max Verstappen's better track record, 1:18.792 the pole time. All right, Cody, if you want to take half the victory lap here, I'll let you do it. Go for it.
I mean, honestly, I was pretty surprised that Max got a pole. I was expecting him to come out of this weekend doing pretty well, but I wasn't expecting him to get on pole. Something not related to the on-track action that I was a little disappointed by was that we didn't even really get to see Max cross the line for his pole lap because the F1 TV direction, which seems to be kind of hit and miss this year, decided it was going to miss by, I don't know if they were just assuming that Lando had the pole, but as soon as he had provisional pole, they cut to the garage shot, and then you see it on the timing that Max Verstappen actually takes first place, and they weren't even looking at the track. So,
and you would have seen that had you had been actually watching the timing, because his lap looked pretty damn good.
Mm-hmm. So weird TV direction there, and something that kind of cracked me up a little bit was I do watch the session highlights. Even when I watch the full session, I watch the session highlights on YouTube from the F1 channel, usually because it's a great way to actually get prepped for these podcasts, because you get to get refreshed on the highlights of the sessions, and gets it all fresh in your mind. But something that I noticed this time that really cracked me up is they fixed that camera thing in the highlights. And they actually, because they've got the camera shots, right? So they fixed that in the highlights, where they actually kept the camera on track for Max. And I was thinking to myself, on one hand, well, good on you for fixing it for the highlights, but you don't get to spare yourself your blushes. You messed it up. You gotta commit to it now. So
you mean Liberty Media manipulated its media just a little bit there?
Yep, exactly. So that cracked me up. They must have gotten enough flack that they realized they fucked up there. But awesome laps from really Lando and Max. It was very close between the two of them. Max just pipped it right at the end, although he had been running pretty much at the front, or close to the front, for all of qualifying, which was really good. Like you said, great session from Gabriel Bortoleto. The kick, however, seems to, some weekends it looks really great in the midfield, and other weekends it's nowhere. This was one of those weekends for Alpine and Racing Bulls. It was really disappointing to see Isaac Hadjar not even getting to Q2 after getting the podium last time out. But I think he still actually managed to pull it back together a little bit in the race, which we'll get to. But yeah, it's just crazy to me how you see like week in, week out as the type of track changes, especially, I mean, in this case, even up front, things really shift around, but especially in the midfield, it seems to, the performance seems to really ebb and flow just based on what track we're at.
Well, yeah, and you couldn't have put together two more different tracks on your calendar a week apart.
Mm-hmm.
Zandvoort, tight, twisty, medium, low speed corners, nothing really high speed. Here, it's all get the downforce off the car, straight line speed, and get through those corners well enough to make the car work. So, that's where everyone's, trying to figure out that magical balance on car setup. And, for Max and the Red Bull, that car and Max, that's where they ate. They ate in the straights by far. For both McLarens, it was a wonky Saturday, actually. And it was actually the first time I even thought this to myself. I went, this was really the first Saturday in a long time I didn't know where they were going to end up, because Lando almost didn't make it out of Q2 and then had to have a lap just to get out of Q2 where he had no toe or anything like that. And that was actually quite stressful because, he does the lap. It's not good enough. He's sitting in like 8th or 9th and everyone's running their second laps. And, he's falling down the order and he falls all the way to 11th. And instead of just going again, the engineer says, oh, let's do double cool. And I'm like, great. So if there's a yellow flag or anything in that final lap, he's screwed. That's the end of this. That's where he's going. So it was a very stressful Q2 for at least my side of the podcast here. But he did manage to get enough in there. And then in Q3, the first run was Lando's first run was awful. He goes out, he's punching the hole in the air, and he's got no toe, and it was like 5/10 down, and I think it was only good for like 7th or something like that. And then the last laps come in. I knew Lando had set. Finally, he got within at least range of somebody of Max in Sector 1. Max was just absolutely crushing the first sector of the lap and taking that advantage and just waning it off just enough to kind of make the lap work. Lando finally got within 1/10 of it, and I'm like, okay, well, at least he's in the game. Much better Sector 2. That was where the McLaren car was doing much better. And then it came down to Sector 3, and 7/100ths or something of a second. But Max's car in that low downforce configuration was well out in front, or out in front enough. Lando put together a hell of a lap. Oscar was really, I hate to say P3 is pedestrian for him, but based on his CV this year, it kind of feels like that. And the Ferraris were still there. I mean, the Ferraris, I think, set the pace in FP1 and everybody got uber excited and probably a little overly joyous on a Friday. And then kind of reality kind of set in for them, but they were the best of the rest between Max and the two McLarens. So they slotted in pretty good. And then you got the two Mercedes right after that. So your power balance, at least here, kind of fell out, with the exception of, I think, Max being back up there, kind of where you would have expected it, at least going into the weekend. If you were just blind, not realizing where we were going, this is probably most of the order of what you would have probably expected. All right. Well, other big shout outs. Yeah. I mean, we talked about Gabby Bortoletto on the good end. And then, what a difference a week makes for the Racing Bull team. Isaac Hadjar goes from the podium to out in Q1. Just goes to show that, again, these cars make their lap time in very, very different ways. All right. So we shall turn to the Sunday race, and we shall start, as we are always apt to do, with the back markers. It's not worth doing a race summary because you blink and you missed it. Like I said, 73 minutes, 1 stops all across the board, but we will talk about that pit stop. Proved to be the flashpoint, if there was one, of the race when we get there. But we'll start with our back markers. The non-classified finishers were the Kick Sauber of Nico Hulkenberg. He got the dreaded DNS. He did not start. He called into the pits on the formation lap due to a hydraulic leak, and the team told him to box, and that was the end of his day before it ever even got going. Ouch. The other non-classified finisher, Fernando Alonso in the Aston Martin, was going along, looked like everything was going on. He gets on one of the curbs, and the suspension decided to say no more. And so he had to box with a busted suspension. So he gets the dreaded DNF. Those were your two non-finishers. P18 was Lance Stroll and the other Aston Martin, so not much better. We expected Aston Martin to be kind of in the house of pain this weekend, and we were right. P17 and P16, the two Alpines, Franco Colapinto and Pierre Gasly. P15 was Esteban Ocon and the Haas. P14, Liam Lawson and the Racing Bulls. And P13, unable to get back into the points despite a better qualifying effort here, was Yuki Tsunoda in the other Red Bull. I don't think we had a whole lot of big surprises here in the back markers, but Cody, any big thoughts here?
Oh, well, I wouldn't say anything starkly surprising, but a few numbers here that freak me out a little bit. We'll start with, as you said, Nico Hulkenberg didn't even get to start, so he didn't get to capitalize on a decent qualifying performance, which is really too bad considering his teammate managed to finish in the points, which we'll get into in a minute. Fernando Alonso just seems to have really rotten luck this year. Like, he's consistently out-qualifying Lance Stroll, and we know he's the better driver, and yet he doesn't really have a whole lot to show for it, because even when he gets good qualifying in, like he did this time, something happens, and it was actually a pretty cool shot on the camera where they had the head-on shot of him going over the curb, and you can tell right away that something failed on the suspension, because the wheel kind of goes up a little bit, and that side of the car kind of dips down, and there's all the sparks flying out the bottom of the car, so really too bad for him there. What else we got here? Lance Stroll sucked. The Alpines sucked. Esteban Ocon maybe didn't have a great weekend all around as it was, but I do feel like he got a bit of an undeserved penalty. Some of the penalties out of this race seemed a little suspect to me. So Esteban Ocon got a penalty for some light collision with Lance Stroll, and it didn't even really look to me like it was that egregious. Like, if anything, it was, we talk about this a lot, how a lot of these things to us just kind of look like, oh, it's a racing incident. Like, neither one of them literally looks like they're at fault for this. And yet, I feel like at this point, we haven't really seen as much of the racing incident stuff used. It seems like the stewards want to apply blame in the majority of incidents, it seems like, right now. So, in my opinion, Esteban Ocon got a little screwed with this penalty there. But,
yeah, it feels as though the trend has been, since those rules of engagement in the corners have come out, it feels as though we're making a more than concerted effort to bring them back out and judge everything by those standards. And
yeah, but not every incident is the same. And I feel like if you're looking at the rules that you made and you said, like, oh, he was on the inside and ahead of the apex or whatever the rules is, then he's supposed to be able to take the racing line. But it's like, at the same time, it's not in a vacuum. You have to look at what the other car is doing, and do they just completely run somebody off the road? Like, was the other person driving like a shithead? So no, I feel like you can't judge everything by those rules. They're not foolproof.
I'm with you. And what it's turned into is the race to the inside of a corner, and the guy on the outside has so much going against him when he is on the outside of a corner, regardless of, you almost have no rights. Like, why would you try and overtake on the outside unless you are 100% convinced you're going to finish it before you get to a corner? Because the second you go to do that, you've basically already lost. So you've taken away an overtaking opportunity when maybe there is one, maybe there isn't. But it just seems like that's what they want to point to. I do think it's a effort to try to pull some of the consistency that we're all screaming about. I just don't know that in application, like in a lab, it makes sense. Let's judge these corners by this. In actuality, what you're seeing is some kind of incidents where it's like, well, okay, he got a little offline and he slipped a little bit. He wasn't trying to punt him off. Like, that whole thing comes from car on the inside physically goes to try, or has the appearance of not turning the wheel enough and allowing the car to drift into the other guy's line. With what I've seen in Zandvoort with Sainz and now here with Behrman is something happened that kind of caused that. There wasn't intent. And I think they're trying to get out of we're trying not to infer intent, but you got to have some sort of common sense at some point, wouldn't you think?
Mm-hmm.
But I mean,
I agree.
Now to the Zandvoort issue, Carlos Sainz's team, Williams, has actually put in a right of review. That hearing is supposedly scheduled for this Friday. And if Carlos Sainz wants to talk to those stewards, he will now have an opportunity, probably a very expensive $5,000 or €5,000 opportunity to do so, because I'm assuming that thing is going to get over before it begins. But they're going to get to make their case and get what they want off their chest. So
they should give him this one for free since they locked him out after the race. But
yeah.
I digress. The last thing I want to touch on here that, the numbers thing that kind of weirded me out a little is Yuki Tsunoda not doing so hot. Now, we got out of this race. Part of the reason this race went so fast, other than the fact that it's Monza, was there were no red flags, there were no safety cars, there were no virtual safety cars, and there were barely any yellow flags. When they happened, they were pretty brief. So this was pretty much like just straight up performance. And Yuki Tsunoda, despite finishing, 10 places in front of Liam Lawson, finishes the race 2 seconds in front of Liam Lawson. On top of that, Yuki Tsunoda, he starts, he starts several places in front of Isaac Hadjar, and he finishes behind Isaac Hadjar by 3 positions. And the icing on the cake, he's driving the same car as Max Verstappen. We've talked about that car is hard to drive. But it's Monza. Like, it's, I'm sure it's got its hard points, but it's not the most difficult track on the calendar, in my opinion. Probably. I'm not a Formula 1 driver, so what do I know? But he did finish 80 seconds behind his teammate who won the race. Like, I'm not sure you can chalk that all up to the car being hard to drive at this point. Like, we saw in years prior Sergio Perez finishing 30 seconds behind Max Verstappen, and we were all kind of poking fun of him for that, being like, oh, well, I guess he's not Max Verstappen. But 80 seconds is a pretty egregious. I mean, he was almost lapped.
Yeah, I mean, it's not getting any better. We've kind of given him his leash. We've been at a bunch of different types of circuits. He's got a new team principal, so new direction and all this other stuff. And by any measure you want to give it to, he's not performing. I mean, that's just the bottom line. And I do think he now has the little, if there was a watch icon over his head that they could superimpose, I think you would see it everywhere he goes now, because I think the clock is a ticking, and Helmut Marko, now that he has won the internal war, is not going to be patient and is going to want to have 2 scoring cars, especially moving forward in the next season. So unless Yuki can turn this around, and Azerbaijan maybe was Azerbaijan was always the weirdest thing ever, because Sergio Perez could have a terrible season, but he would go great in Baku. It didn't matter whether he had a good season, he'd go good in Baku. He had a bad season, he was going good in Baku. He's got to tap into some Sergio Perez magic in the next round or 2.
At least one really good one under your belt to show you got it.
Like, even just P7. If he can just get to P7, I think it would take a huge amount of pressure off of him. But I'm not seeing it. So until I see it, I can't get behind it. And yeah, I don't see him surviving much into the offseason, or certainly coming back into that seat next year. Especially given the form of Isaac Hadjar, who turned his weekend around. And as we get into the midfield, we will start with P12. That was Ali Behrman. P11 was Carlos Sainz. That aforementioned Isaac Hadjar gets into the points and finishes a hard-earned P10 after starting from the pit lane, basically, because he swapped out the engine and all the other bits so that he could get more into his pool, and it proved to work. P9 was Kimi Antonelli. P8 was Gabby Bortoletto in the kick Sauber. P7 was Alex Albon, who made the Williams effort a lot better than certainly was their qualifying. P6 was Lewis Hamilton in the Ferrari, rallying from his 5-place grid drop and getting up to P6. P5 was George Russell in the Mercedes, and yet another race where George Russell is just kind of there. I don't know that he did a whole lot. He rode around. He was relatively quick, and there he is in P5. And P4 was Charles Leclerc in the other Ferrari. So yeah, no Tifosi podium, no celebration of the podium for Ferrari this time out. But Cody, big thoughts here in the midfield.
Yeah, despite the fact it was what I predicted, I was a little disappointed to not see a Ferrari on the podium. I did think maybe it could happen at the very beginning of the race because Charles Leclerc was fighting pretty hard against Oscar Piastri there, going back and forth with Piastri to fight for third place. He ended up not being able to hold on to it as time went on, but he gave us a little bit of hope there for a few minutes. Like you said, good recovery drive from Lewis Hamilton, pretty much just about made his way back up to where he qualified, which is probably about as good as he could have hoped for with that grid drop. This was the second penalty that I thought was a little maybe not entirely deserved by any one driver, or if it was deserved, I actually thought maybe it was a little more on Carlos Sainz. So essentially what happens here is that I think it was it Carlos Sainz was doing the overtake, or was it Oliver Behrman was going for the overtake?
No, I know Behrman ends up on the outside going into the second chicane.
Behrman, you have going into the turn, Carlos Sainz is in front. He's on the outside. He more or less, I guess maybe Behrman didn't get out of it enough, but Carlos Sainz turns in on Oliver Behrman and they both spin out. And I even texted you at that moment saying,
it's the closest we were coming to a safety car.
You better not ruin my good morning. Feeling that it was really on Carlos Sainz because he turned, to me, it looked like he turned in on Oliver Behrman, kind of pretended his car wasn't there anymore and turned in on him. And they spun out. And then, lo and behold, Oliver Behrman is the one who gets the penalty. Oliver Behrman is up to, 9 penalty points now? So
no, he's 10. He's two away from a magical race ban.
Getting close to a ban. And
yet another Haas. Maybe it's just that seat. I don't know. But, I mean, that's the Kevin Magnussen seat from the year before, and we all know what happened to him.
Yeah, he's definitely channeling some K-Mag penalty magic. But, yeah, he definitely didn't need this penalty. And, again, I don't really think it was entirely on him. They give him the penalty because it seems like they're looking at the rules and they're saying, okay, who's on the outside? Okay, check that box. Okay, who's ahead at this point? Okay, check that box. Okay, and then they say, okay, based on these criteria, this person's at fault. When really, I think it was probably a little bit of both of them. Carlos Sainz pretended like Oliver Behrman's car, vanished into thin air.
Wasn't there, and
Oliver Behrman maybe was a little too, gung ho going into that turn based on where he was at that far on the inside. But that one to me, this one would really be another racing incident, and instead you've now got Oliver Behrman quite close to a racing ban or a race ban, and he's got I think 4 more races or something until he starts dropping a couple penalty points. So he's got to be really careful now, which I don't think is entirely deserved.
Yeah, and I think it just puts more pressure on a guy who's just still trying to figure everything out in Formula One. And I look at the incidents and I don't look at them and say any one of these are so egregious that, the race ban rule was put in because Roman Grosjean actually endangered lives at Spa when he decided to just bulldoze 8 cars.
Be a missile. Yeah.
Yeah, be a missile on the first lap of that race. None of what Ollie Behrman has done has come anywhere close to that. They've been individual incidents, and it's just kind of been in they just keep popping up that he gets put at fault. And, it kind of reminds me of a young, I'm going to use an NFL because the NFL just kicked off this past weekend. It's a young wide receiver, and he goes up against the veteran defensive back, and they both go up for the ball, and the referee throws a flag, and you expect it to be on the defense because it's always on the defense, and yet the ref goes pass interference and points at you. And Ollie Behrman's like, what? What are you doing?
What did I do?
Yeah, what did I do? So, it would be very unfortunate if we end up getting to a race ban. I hope he doesn't. And I hope it's not because like he just kept getting the brunt of all these accumulated stewards' decisions.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Last couple bits here. Isaac Hadjar actually still managed to have himself a really good race despite his poor qualifying. Managed to fight his way into the points. Gabriel Bortolato held on to the 8th place that he qualified in, so a great effort from him, getting a couple good points there. And like you said before, Alex Albon, despite Williams not having the best qualifying performance here, we always talk about how Williams always seems to go really well at this track over the last bunch of seasons. And even though Williams himself is trying to be like, hey, we're not just like good at Monza anymore, guys. Albon did manage to work some magic and actually get a much needed strong points finish for them because this helps solidify their place at the front of the midfield and the constructors. So good effort from him as well.
Yeah, it takes the pressure off if there was boiling pressure from behind. Aston Martin had themselves a terrible weekend, so that was who would be chasing Williams, and this just opens up that gap a little bit more. So Aston Martin are going to have to work twice as hard if they want to make the P5 battle a thing. The P6 battle continues to rage on. Like I said, any one of 3 teams could finish there, and Alpine just continue to be the best worst team ever, pretty much. They still have scored points, but it's not enough, obviously, to get them back into the fight in the constructors. All right, so we'll move into our podium, and we should probably talk about the start of the race and maybe the first 6 laps, because if there was action in this race, that's really where it was, because after the first 6 laps, we got into tire talk. A lot of, even though they were fast laps, tire talk, because Pirelli, while they did go a step softer, probably brought a set of tires and compounds to this track that didn't work the way they definitely would have anticipated. Their whole strategy has been to try to promote not just 1-stop races, but 2-stop races. And what we ended up with was 80% of this race being completed on a medium tire. That tells me
you could have made this a no stop and possibly on a medium tire.
By far. I mean, you could have done the Nico Rosberg, I box on lap 1, I put my set of hard tires on and finish the race. That easily could have been the strategy. You could have also said, I start on soft tires and box on lap 1, put a set of mediums on, and finish the race. And you probably would have been fine. The tires just did not dig. And so it became down basically to the start. Lando and Max obviously lined up P1 and Max is in P1, Lando's in P2. Max tries to cut Lando off going down that front straight. Lando got enough position to where Max really couldn't do that. Lando runs into the grass a little bit, but able to maintain control. And then we get into the first chicane. Max takes the shortcut through the not the one that you have to do the pirouette around the bollards there.
The corner cut.
Right, he goes through the corner. Lando makes the corner. And Max actually did the thing that I thought probably won in the race, which was he gave Lando the position. Because if he doesn't give Lando that position right away, he probably picks up a 5-second penalty based on what we know. You go back to Saudi Arabia, it's the whole same exact argument all over again.
Yep. You brought up exactly what I was going to mention was when I saw him, and you could make the argument that, and he tried to make the argument that Lando ran him out of road. But when I saw him cut that corner to keep the lead, all I could think of was like, God damn it, this is going to be exactly the same as Saudi Arabia, where he's either not going to give it back and he's going to get a penalty and that's going to lose him the race, or he's going to have to give the position back and then he's not going to have clean air and McLaren's just going to take off down the road. But he does give the position back, and for a minute there, it looked like maybe Lando was going to start pulling ahead, but then, much to my surprise, Max caught right back up to him.
Never did.
Maybe 2 laps later or something like that. Got a good move on him at the end of the main straight with DRS, and that was pretty much it for the big on-track action. Max opened up a decent gap. After the tires started to degrade, the gap kind of evened out and then even started to shrink just a little bit as The
It
tires
took
wearing down.
42 laps
Yeah, it took
for that to
forever.
even get
Eventually,
there.
it did start going the way of McLaren with their better tire deg apparently, but it wasn't enough.
No.
And yeah, like Max finally decides he's going to pit. Yeah, like 40 some laps in the race. He takes the hard tires. And at that point, the McLarens were pretty much just hoping for some kind of intervention to give him a cheap pit stop, like a safety car.
Almost got it, but they got the double yellow flags, but alas,
yeah,
signs
that was when my heart kind of skipped a beat. I was like, you got to be.
But I honestly would have thought, even at that point, that Max had enough pace. Like he was not going to get caught. Like you watch the timing, and you could just tell Max was just that little bit better throughout each sector. Like even when Lando would come back at him a little bit, it wasn't consistent enough. So Max got the car into the groove, got into his rhythm, where we haven't really seen him for in a long time. And you have to remember, when that dude gets in the rhythm in clean air and all that, it's just as dominant as anybody else. And he went out and he took that race. And I think it's because he gave that position back. If he gets some sort of a penalty there, now he's all upset on the radio. He might not be concentrating as much. Lord only knows when maybe they try to box him earlier to get the penalty off of him to let him go out. It may be a very, very different race. But the team call and the Max getting, like, understanding it and just saying, well, I've got better pace throughout this. I'm just going to go past them later. Probably is the move that ended up winning in the thing. But so Max is definitely out in front and ends up winning the race by a very wide margin, 19 seconds. So this was a bit of 2023-esque Max Verstappen coming back into the fray. The bigger story, or apparently the bigger story, it concerns the two McLarens and the pit stop sequence that happened. So Max comes in and pits. The McLarens decided, well, why not? Let's just do a home run strategy, get our cars in clean air, which in other tracks has worked for them. And let's try to go to a soft. So because this medium tire, which we just said could have run the entirety of the race and they would have probably been fine. But you have the one obligatory pit stop. That's within the rules. You got to change your compound. So they were going to go medium to soft. So the call comes in, and Lando actually made it too, where he says, hey, if Oscar's got any sort of issue with Leclerc behind, you might just want to, I will give up my right to the first car to come in and pit because I'm leading on track position. I'll let Oscar do that. Just make sure he doesn't undercut me. And if you had, flashbacks to Hungary last year, we all know what kind of can happen there. And they came on the radio very distinctively to both drivers and said, this is what we're going to do. He's not going to undercut you. So Oscar comes in, makes his stop, gets on the soft tire, goes back out, covers off Leclerc. His race seems to be fine. Lando comes in one lap later. It's a very slow pit stop. I think it was like 8 seconds or something like that. The left front tire would not engage, or he couldn't get the green light from the tire gun. So he actually comes out and in a position where he wouldn't have expected to be, and he's now behind Oscar by about 1, maybe 2 seconds. And it was at that point that McLaren did something that I don't think a lot of people have expected them to do. I certainly didn't expect to hear it, was that they were going to, air quote, reestablish the order. So that harkens back to exactly what happened in Hungary last year when they came across with that message. But this time there was no 40-lap drama about it. Oscar says, okay, I got it. Switches back. Ends up actually in DRS. And then they said, okay, well, once the swap was done, free to race and go back to doing what you're doing. Lando pulls out maybe another second or two over Oscar in the end. And they come home. Lando Norris comes home second. Oscar Piastri comes home third. So that's what happened. And then, of course, I don't know. I'm going to save my commentary on the team order bit till we get to our awards. Just to make you want to come back for that, because I think it's going to be a little more interesting. But Cody, thoughts on the podium just in general? Like I said before, Max was as dominant as I've seen him this year.
Yeah, it was good to see Max having a really strong race. this year. Something that he was able to just kind of pull out and walk away with a little bit. That isn't to say that McLaren's did bad here. They've got both the other podium positions, so there's definitely still very, very strong. I definitely think that this was more the nature of the track than anything else. Maybe we'll see Max get a decent performance at Azerbaijan and probably more likely so at Las Vegas, but it's definitely not going to be, Max is going to win everything for the rest of the year.
If it rains in Brazil,
definitely not that.
If it rains in Brazil, I'm going to take shelter under a blanket because I know what's coming.
Yes, so this does not change the status quo, really. But good to see someone else other than the McLaren drivers. How did it come to this? We're 2/3 of the way through the season. And it's like, God, and McLaren winning everything is getting a little boring here. But I considering it wasn't the most exciting race, I definitely enjoyed it from my side of things.
It was one of those where all of a sudden I just looked down. I think I even texted you this and went, holy crap, that's lap 40. Yep. It didn't feel like that. It felt like the end of a stint. It felt like, okay, time for the mid-race pit stop. Oh, wait, the race is freaking almost over. I mean, and Monza can do this. This is not the first time that something like this has happened. And I've always said, you want to kill the entertainment factor, put every car on basically the same strategy. And if you don't have tire offset, you don't have enough deg to make it fun, it's going to take some sort of an intervention. It's going to take a safety car, a virtual safety car, something. And if you don't get that, this is kind of what you ended up with. You ended up with a lot of DRS train that really couldn't go anywhere. It was very difficult to pass outside of the slipstream. The only one who was able to do it consistently was Max. That car just could do whatever he wanted it to do. And you got to just kind of, from my perspective, I just tip my cap and say, hey, we weren't good enough this weekend to take the win. He deserves the win. They had actually, this is one of the, I think from Friday to Sunday, one of the smoother Max Verstappen weekends that I can remember in a while. Really no drama, always near the top throughout all of the sessions. The McLarens found it for qualifying, but it wasn't easy. They would find it in the quali sims, so they would always look good in the end of practices, but during the early runs, they didn't look all that great. They looked like they were trying to find something. So, it is a track that doesn't suit the strength of the McLaren car. You take away the tire deg. That's a huge, thing the McLaren car does well. And straight line speed is something that car just has never in this iteration had. Elite straight line speed. It always gets through the corners. And I saw the overlay of the ghost car between Max and Lando's lap, and you can see that so well because every time we get to a straight, there goes the Red Bull car. Every time it gets to the corner, it pulls back. But there's not enough corners for the McLaren car to do what it does well, and there's not enough of the type of corners that the McLaren car really does well to make it work. So, hey, sometimes you got to tip your cap. But if it was all Canada and Monza going home, I'd be much more nervous. But I had that feeling again, and I was proven to be correct, even though I didn't necessarily predict it. But all right, so we will leave that here. We will save our debate on the team order thing till we get to our awards, so you will want to come back for that. But anyway, we're going to take a break. We'll re-rack. We'll tell you what this did to those driver and constructor standings. We'll open it up to what you guys thought of the weekend in the fan email segment, and then we will get into those awards. And then we will talk a little bit about predictions, and we'll wrap it up. So come on back in a little bit. You won't want to miss it. All right, welcome back on in. This is Season 7, Episode number 31 of the Outlap F1 Podcast. It's our 2025 Italian GP review show. And trust me, good things are always worth waiting for. So if you've waited to find our show, we're glad you're here. So you've got Andy and I'm along with Cody tonight, and we just wrapped up talking about Max Verstappen's almost 20-second victory in the Italian GP, which set not only the qualifying record, but the fastest overall Grand Prix time in 1 hour, 13 minutes, and 24 seconds. So yeah, blink and you will miss it. Most races go to 90 minutes. This thing was done in 73. That was fast. No doubt about it, that was fast. But all right, so what did this result do to the driver and the Constructors Championships? Cody, if you want to take the drivers, I will handle the teams.
Right. Oscar Piastri still sits in first place of the driver standings with McLaren at 324 points. He loses 3 points on his lead ahead of Lando Norris in second place. The other McLaren sitting at 293 points. Max Verstappen makes, I guess, small gains that really mean nothing at this point, but it was fun to watch. Max Verstappen in third place with Red Bull at 230 points. George Russell kind of floating out in the middle of everyone now, as he kind of seems to be doing on track too. He's in fourth place in the standings in the Mercedes at 194 points. And behind him is Charles Leclerc in fifth place with Ferrari at 163 points. A little bit of a gap between fifth and sixth down to Lewis Hamilton and the other Ferrari at 117 points. But even if he didn't have maybe the race he wanted out of Monza, I'm sure being out there in the Ferrari with all the Tifosi was probably quite the experience, and I'm sure he loved it despite.
It's a religion, that those fans and that team. I've never seen its equal. I mean, I'm a dedicated, you know me. I can't compete with that, man. I just can't.
If I went to Monza for the race, I feel like I would have to buy some Ferrari clothes to wear. I feel like at that point I would want to be part of that if I was going to be there. But moving on, seventh place, Alex Albon and the Williams is at 70 points, so he's now actually pulled ahead of Kimi Antonelli. They were tied on points before. Now he is 4 points ahead of Kimi Antonelli, who's in eighth place for Mercedes at 66 points. Isaac Hadjar, ninth place. So doing wonders in that Racing Bulls, especially over the last bunch of races at this point. He's been having some pretty good consistent performance. Isaac Hadjar, ninth place at 38 points, and that puts him 1 point ahead of Nico Hulkenberg at this point. Nico Hulkenberg, 10th place for Kick Sauber at 37 points. So we've got two guys I didn't really expect to see making their way into the top 10 of the points at this point, and ironically, both those guys have unexpected podiums as well. Very popular, very happy to see. What are the team standings looking like?
All right, so we are actually able to talk about, I think, clinching scenarios in the Constructors. McLaren, Mercedes have extended their lead in the Constructors. They are up to 617 points. If you remember, last year they scored, when they won the Constructors, 666 points. So only 50-some points and a lot of rounds to go. The idea that they could score 1,000 points is not out of the realm.
I know, it's scary. It's nuts. I was actually just looking at that the other day, being like, man, we still got a lot of races left. They're already at 617, and I was going back to 2023 when they scored when Red Bull scored 860, and I was pretty sure that was the most amount of points ever, and that was with one car doing most of the heavy lifting. You've got two drivers, making waves at this point in a very dominant car. So, yeah, the gap between them and second place is nutty. And if they scored 1,000 points, A, it would be monumental, and B, it would be well-deserved, I think.
Be one hell of a race car, I'll tell you that. But anyway, they open up the gap on Ferrari. They check in with 280 points. P3 is Mercedes. So Ferrari have opened up a bit of a gap in for the P2 battle there. For our Mercedes now check in with 260 points. P4 is Red Bull, buoyed mostly by Max Verstappen's almost Herculean efforts at certain tracks. They check in with 239 points. P5, Williams, the Albon finish helps them out. They move up to 86 points. So they open back up the gap that was coming down a bit on Aston Martin, who remain on 62 points. Only a scant point in front of Racing Bulls. So here we go. P7, Racing Bulls, 61. P8, Kick Sauber, not that far behind with 55. And P9, Haas, don't forget about them. They just need to put together a weekend, and they could pop right back into that P6 battle as well. They are on 44 points. P10, best of the worst, I guess. Alpine, they do remain on 20 points, but it's been a while since we've moved off of that for them. All right, so you've heard most of our takes on the Italian GP, but now it's time for our favorite segment, the fan email segment. We'll start with our regulars here. Rachel Fleming's got some good points. We've got some stuff in here from the formula as well. Cody, it is your time to shine. What we got?
All right, our first one comes in from Rachel Fleming. Thank you, Rachel. And she says, well, I love this track. It usually delivers. It didn't today. This was a hugely disappointing Grand Prix. It's all about perspective, Rachel. I thought it was a very exciting Grand Prix for me. Okay, well done to Max. 2 wins in Italy this year, which actually is a good point. He's got both the Italy wins. Was never really threatened, even when McLaren tried their best, but all their advantages this season seemed to fade very quickly. Not a good race for Haas. Both drivers ended with penalties and out of the points. Alonso watch. Fernando had a great opportunity to cause a safety car by stopping his broken car somewhere. Yeah, my heart did kind of skip a beat on that one, too, when I thought he was going to stop on the track. Stopping his broken car somewhere, but no, he has to drag his car back to the pit lane. Then we got Sauber Watch. Nico didn't even start, but Gabriel got some good points for the team. And finally, Red Bull's second seat. It's going to what I was talking about earlier. Are the team no longer bothered because the results just seem to get worse these days? I'm sure they are bothered, but still. Yeah, they have to be bothered because the fact that they don't have a second driver in the mix is costing them money, literally. Like, they could very easily, with a driver that's performing better, they could very easily be in the fight for, at least third place in the team standings, if not second place. Grand scheme of things, they're really not that far off, and Max has like 230 out of the 239 points. So
it's ridiculous.
Second driver would really help them a lot in the team standings, which is where all the money is at. Would also help them with strategy in the races. So yeah, I'm sure they're bothered. But this goes back to something we've discussed a lot of times, and all the commentators have been talking about is how much of it is the car being really hard to drive and Max just being Max, and how much of it is that, maybe Red Bull just doesn't have the talent in their pool for that second seat. And we've seen good stuff from Yuki Tsunoda before. We've seen it from him when he was in the Racing Bulls. We saw good things from Liam Lawson when he was in the Racing Bulls. We saw good things from Sergio Perez in Red Bull, just, kind of few and far between by the end. And we know that he was a proven good driver before he even made it to Red Bull, working wonders in midfield machinery. So, at this point, like I said before, it's still, the car is a monster to drive, I'm sure. But the further that we get into this season without seeing a standout performance from Yuki Tsunoda, the more I'm thinking that it's not all just the car at this point. I think maybe he's just not suited for that second seat.
Well, and it goes back to what I've kind of said before about that second seat. And we've talked a lot about it, but I think you don't set it up for success when you bring in one of these Red Bull Junior Academy guys and put them in that seat. Why? They owe their career to Red Bull. They are not going to have the backbone to stand up and say, this car setup sucks. They can't do that. They can't say that in the media. They can't put any external pressure on the team. They can't advocate for their own case. Why? Because their entire Formula One career is beholden to the team. And they have long-term contracts and they're stuck. And that's why you see this happen over and over again. The only guy who wasn't like that was Sergio Perez, who now we're on the grand Sergio Perez apology tour until he straps up for Cadillac next year. I think every race this season, we're going to say, we're really sorry, Sergio. We didn't really mean it. And that's
I feel
where
bad for
we
some
are
of
with
the
that
commentary that I said about Sergio Perez over the last couple of years.
We take it back. We were just looking at what we thought we saw. Apparently, we didn't see what we thought we saw. Our eyes had deceived us, and we're sorry. But yeah, I mean, do they care? Of course they care. Do I like, again, when they did the Horner move, I like who they put in place. Lauren McKees is a guy that I've always had a lot of respect for. He's one of the guys that I look at and say, this guy doesn't have team-colored glasses. He will call it like he sees it, and he will fix things. It's going to take a while, and maybe even next year may not look so good because you're so far down that development road that you might not be able to turn around. But if there's going to be a turnaround, it's going to come a lot quicker with a guy like Mekis at the helm than a guy like Horner would have been at the helm, because Christian loved to prance around like a peacock and believed some of what is his own bullshit sometimes, and never wanted to admit he was ever wrong. Lauren McKees will can come into that team and say, well, this isn't right, this isn't right, this isn't right. I see a lot of now what Red Bull is doing, how they are starting to rebuild, doing a lot of the same thing McLaren used to do when Stella came on board. It's the exact same kind of approach. We're going to look at it, we're going to evaluate, we're going to let it get through this season, and then start to fix it next year.
Yep.
So Max wants to get that fifth championship. That is a path to get there.
Mm-hmm. This was Lauren Mecchia's first win as a team principal as well, so congratulations to him. It's good to see, them getting some fruit from the change in leadership, I guess, because it was getting progressively hairier there, and it's good to see they get the win here. So not all is lost. They can still pull it back together. It's just going to take some time and effort. I think we pretty much did a good job of talking about most of the stuff here. Good one for Max. Not really threatened. We talked about the penalties for the Haas drivers. Fernando's awful luck. I think we pretty much nailed all that one. So thank you, Rachel, for your email. Next one comes in from the Formula, and this one made me laugh when I was checking it out beforehand. Formula says, "I wish somebody loved me as much as the Tifosi love motorsport." They are, like you said, a religion. It's actually kind of crazy. There's two things these red-clad Italians like. It's I'm assuming the Pope and Ferrari. But goes on to say, every year Monza delivers something. Even if it doesn't deliver a great race, it still delivers an unparalleled atmosphere. Mad respect to those Tifosi. The passion is unreal. I marvel at their level of fandom for racing. I say we start a GoFundMe to fly you guys, myself, Rachel, and Dave to Monza 2026. Surely the financial support will be flowing in to make it happen.
That's our Patreon. There we go.
We can make that happen. I'd be happy as a clam. Actually, I can't remember which one it is, but didn't somebody go to
John
Monza?
did. John did a while ago. Yeah. So he's been there.
And I think he said it was quite the awesome experience. I would love to go. I have not really. I've never been to Italy. Wouldn't stop me. It'd probably be a little crazy getting there, but it would be definitely an experience because, like you said, the atmosphere there, as far as fandom for motor racing, would be unparalleled, and it would just be awesome. I would love to go. I don't know if the GoFundMe is going to do it, but
we can try. We'll just put hashtag send us to Monza.
Ironically, I think actually, even though Monza is wildly popular and long-standing in the sport, I think it's actually cheaper than the U.S. Grand Prix tickets you and I have.
Probably, ironically, it probably is. I mean, that's the ridiculous nature of just
how racing crazy in the United States.
How everything in this country, different podcast, but how just everything in this country is inflated and beyond craziness. It's
a whole other podcast, though.
Yes, I was going to say, we could go off on a whole other tangent and get into a whole lot of other stuff that nobody who's tuned into this show wants us to go. So I'm going to stop there. We go because we love it, and we go because we can, and we're blessed to do it. And that's the end of my discussion there. End of story. Mm-hmm. And you'll see us at Coda. Done.
Trust me, we will tell you how blessed we feel following the race weekend, because it's going to be a good time. Well, we might
no one gets, and then nobody gets any Christmas gifts from either of us.
Yeah, but thank you, Mr. Formula, for your email.
Yes, thank you to both Rachel and Mr. Formula for your respective comments. Don't know where Dave's gone, but hope that he's doing well wherever he is. I'm sure he is listening in spirit like he always does. All right, so we will transition into our awards. And notice we haven't really talked about one aspect of this race. But we'll start with our rubbish. We're kind of diametrically opposed on here. Cody, I'll let you go first, and then I'll come in after that.
All right. My rubbish award goes to McLaren. McLaren, stop inventing. I understand that Lando Norris got pretty screwed over by the slow pit stop, and he had qualified better. He'd been running in front of Oscar the whole race. Did Lando deserve to finish in second based on all of that? Yeah, I would say so. But that's not really how auto racing works most of the time. Crazy shit happens, and you just got to roll with it. And, Oscar Piastri got a fantastic pit stop, 1.9 seconds or something like that. Super speedy, and yeah, Lando just had some rotten luck in the pits. But I did not agree with swapping the positions back. And I know it was only for a 6-point swing, Oscar standing to gain three points versus lose 3 points. But it didn't feel right because you're punishing Oscar Piastri for something that he had no control over and wasn't his fault. He lucked into that situation. Yes, it was misfortune on his teammate that gave him the opportunity to move up into second place, but that's not his fault. It's the team's fault. And I feel like it was wrong to make him sacrifice the position because of that. I feel like you're punishing Oscar Piastri for something that wasn't his fault. You're punishing him because the team made a mistake. And I felt like that was pretty unfair, especially considering these guys are only fighting each other for the Drivers' Championship. We talked about the Constructors' Championship is virtually wrapped up. It's just these guys fighting for the Drivers' Championship. For all we know, could be the only time to ever really get to fight for this. Every point counts. They've been very fair and cordial to each other throughout the whole season up till now, even though they're in this situation. But I feel like at some point you have to let that go, and you have to just let what happens lie. To me, it really did feel kind of manufactured that you're giving Lando back the place. You're saying, "Oh, sorry, we fucked up. We're gonna fix this. We're gonna make it right by letting Lando pass you back up," which, you're just gonna let him by, and therefore you're also gonna just have to accept that your lead that you developed is going to shrink a little bit. Like, it just doesn't seem right to me. And if you look at a more, obviously it would never happen in something as severe as this, but if you look at like a more extreme case, you begin to see how ridiculous it sounds. For instance, we had Lando Norris retire from the last race. You're not going to, that was all misfortune. It was not Lando's fault. It wasn't Oscar's fault. It wasn't even entirely the team's fault, probably, but it was misfortune. It's not like McLaren's going to come over the radio and say, "Oh, this one was really kind of unfair on Lando. We want you to box to retire, Oscar." No, it's never going to happen. And yeah, this was only over 3 points, but it still feels wrong. All right, there's my side. I got my venting out.
That's all right. And that is, I've heard that take in a few, more than a few spots, and I understand the frustration by it. Would I have done that in that situation? No, I would not have. I would not have called for that. The reason that they did it, from what I can understand, was because they made it clear that Lando gave up the opportunity for the first pit stop. Now, should Lando have done that? That's maybe not. Didn't need to do it.
He needs to have a little bit more of that hard, aggressive racer in him, because he should have been like, "Hell no! Like, I am taking that first pit stop."
It wasn't even like suggested that they were going to do that, but it was, again, it was a strange set of calls that I was like, I was even like, kind of, huh? What are we doing here? Had Lando just taken the first pit stop, we're probably not talking about any of this. Now, the part that annoys me is, one, I think this thing got blown way up. all of a sudden I'm hearing, well, if this happens in Abu Dhabi and they're going to they're not going to artificially manipulate anything moving forward. I think they will learn from this just like anything else. It's only a matter of 3 points.
Year. It happened last year. They clearly didn't learn.
Well, so what they did from that was they agreed to a set of principles. They sat down and they said, this is what we're going to do. In these situations, this is what we're doing. If Oscar had come out and said, that's not what I agreed to, we should have done something else, it's a much different argument. He went along with it.
Though.
But he went along with it.
He did, because there was the radio message where he said...
the exact same thing that happened before. It's the exact
same
thing
that happened on the radio, though, where he said, I thought we agreed that bad pit stops were just part of racing, but if you want me to switch back, I'll do it. And that's what he said on the radio. It almost makes it sound like that they had agreed beforehand that...
Well, they did. They came to both guys that he wasn't going to undercut him. They agreed that he wasn't going to undercut him. So that was the discussion. I don't know. I guess the thing that annoys me was we got so hot. And again, maybe this is just my thing with last year in this race. I think I'm more pissed off about that than I am any of the reaction to this. Just because last year the championship wasn't nearly as close. And everyone was like, well, of course you should do team orders. Why aren't you doing team orders? Where are the team orders? Here's your team order. What are we doing? Pick one.
Team orders
yes. But, I mean, just be consistent with what your critiques are. Would I have done it? No, I wouldn't have done it. And Lando shouldn't have done it. Is my opinion of it. He should have just taken the pit stop, taken the P2. That was all he was going to get. They weren't going to go any farther than that. Max was too fast. They all knew that. And there was no really legitimate threat from Leclerc. Like, if there is a thing that annoys me about the whole sequence, is why are you worried about Charles Leclerc? He's nowhere near a threat to Oscar at that point of the race. You were faster than them. You'd proven that. Just take what you were going to get and go be done with it. Anyway, rant's over. All right, so we will move on to our analysis paralysis. Cody, I'll let you go first here. What you got?
Yep, I kind of already gave the details of mine a little bit earlier, but I felt like analysis paralysis went to the penalty situation this time out. I felt like there was those 2 penalties given to Ocon and Behrman in this race, where I don't really think all the fault lied with them. I think they really should have been racing incidents. I think every one of those incidents was somewhat at fault. And it used to be that was just okay. They would review those types of incidents and they would say, yeah, everyone kind of sucks here, or nobody sucks here. It just happened. It's a racing incident. No penalties, no penalty points. And it just seems like the FIA is moving further and further away from that every incident requires a guilty party. And therefore, you're giving out some penalties that are really not deserved. And those come with, not only in race issues, but with the penalty point system, you're giving drivers penalty points that, as you said, were never really meant to be given for like minor incidents like this. It's made for the French missile crisis.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I mean, I totally get what you're saying there. And then it's also weird, some of the stuff that, like, we see infringements that, to me, are much more interested in the interest of safety. Like, we've seen, like, unsafe releases and even the incident with Piastri coming out in one of the free practices before, like, the FIA published the time, where, like, other people had gotten a one place grade penalty. And here they said, yeah, it's a penalty, but we're going to give a warning because there was no sporting advantage. To me, if the bigger issue should be the ones based on safety grounds, I don't have a problem. Like, the people in the pit lane aren't wearing their protective gear during the practices. They're usually in shorts and a t-shirt and maybe a helmet. If you're futzing with that kind of stuff and you're unsafe releasing and all that other stuff, yeah, that's a team problem. But I'm surprised that stuff gets more that stuff seems to be stuff that's more let go And what we're talking about when we get into these corner situations is the stuff that they're not letting go. So, yeah, I mean, it feels like we should switch the priority there, and maybe we would be a little bit happier with the results. But my analysis paralysis, and I guess I can't really blame Pirelli. They tried; they did go a step softer on the tires, but when you run 80% of your Grand Prix on a single set of medium tires, I don't care what you've done. You've brought the wrong tires. You should not be able to do that. You should not be able to do the Nico Rosberg box on lap 1 and won the whole race. And you did. And you could have.
We've seen a lot of that this season. We've seen so many Grand Prix where Pirelli has bought softer tires than the same Grand Prix last year, and they're even using a new, even softer soft compound to accommodate for bringing a softer compound at races where they were already using the softest on offer. And it just doesn't seem to be making a big enough difference. I'm not sure if it's just the cars are being, reaching the peak of their design where they're able to hold on to the tires as long as possible. But yeah, it was not good here that you're running that soft and you're still got your tires holding on forever.
Yeah, I mean, the correlation that I wish I had more time to do, and I may, if I want to embrace my inner F1 nerddom and do this, would be to say, is there a correlation between the tracks that have more recently been resurfaced or have had resurfacing in certain parts of the track and that type of thing? Like, we saw that in Japan, which was a clear one stop. We saw it in Imola, which was a clear one stop. These are tracks that have recently, because they've come back to the calendar, had some money spent on them and have been recently renovated. And part of that has been doing some track. Now, it may be totally necessary, but track resurfacing. So what you've seen is you're not getting as much deg at certain of these places as what you would expect to have. So something I weigh in the back of my head, if I have a free moment, may decide to dive into just for fun and shits and giggles.
Isn't it kind of part of on Pirelli, though, to kind of do the science for that, though? Like, look at a track and be like, it's been resurfaced recently. Maybe we need to go extra soft. I don't know.
But when you have to make that call 7 months before your Grand Prix, and the track maybe does it and they don't tell you, this is how you sometimes can look really stupid, or almost look really stupid. Now, I don't think that they did that here. I think that track was resurfaced a couple years ago, and they should have known where it was going to be, but it just clearly didn't have the deg. And it, from an entertainment standpoint, if you want to make racing in this formula category more entertaining, you have to have one of two things. You got to have some sort of an intervention, or you got to have enough deg so that it really matters and the tire offset can matter. It never mattered here. This was a straight pace fight, and Max clearly won it. Clearly. All right. So we'll move on to our dark horse of the day. I'm going to give this one to Alex Albon. Significant points for Williams here. That was a result that team needed. I thought they did well to rally after what felt like to me a disappointing qualifying, because they were splitting the McLarens and the Ferraris in the first couple practices, and I thought, wow, that pace isn't dropping off. They're sticking with it, and then just they got to qualifying and just everybody just kept going and they didn't follow. But good on Albon to rally for that result.
Mm-hmm. And my dark horse is going to go to Gabriele Bortoleto. It's probably based on past performances from Kick Sauber, but I'm always amazed when they make it to Q3, and then I'm even more amazed when Bortoleto gets into Q3 and he's able to hold on to that spot for the race. So it's just crazy to me that they've been in the points so consistently. They've even got a podium. Obviously, that wasn't Bortoleto who did that, but Bortoleto is proving himself to be a very capable rookie driver, and I think there's a lot of good things ahead for him. And yeah, he's going to be my dark horse.
Yeah, very good. That is a more than deserved pick there too. I've been nothing but impressed since since they've gone to Europe. I think Gabby Bortoleto is rounding into form and is doing the things to make his manager Fernando Alonso quite proud of him, to be honest with you, and has earned the praise. So well done, sir. All right, so driver of the day. This one is easy for me. This was Max Verstappen's coming out party on a track that suited him. It suited the car. He was clearly the fastest. Clearly the fastest qualifying time, fastest ever race time. You got to tip your cap when you just get beat by on pure pace. So Max Verstappen, well done, sir.
Yep, I totally agree. This one's going to go to Max for driver of the day. These little islands of Max winning this season are keeping me happy, keeping me, I guess, satisfied. Even though I know he's not going to win the championship for the fifth time in a row, it's letting me be happy for the McLaren drivers that they're going to run away with the driver's title.
All right, very good. We agree there. All right, so we will move into our prediction results. I could have gone much better had I picked Max to take the pole or picked Max to take the race win. I did not, but I still had not a bad weekend. I finished the weekend with 4 points. I got the fastest quali time, barely. And somehow the actual quali lap time managed to almost split the two of us, almost even. It comes down to like the second decimal point.
I looked at the times and I remember when we did the predictions, I was like, man, your prediction and my prediction are pretty close to each other. And it managed to slot in between us still.
Well, that's the talent of Max Verstappen. He not only, set the fastest lap, but managed to get right in the middle almost of our quali lap time, which is the math on that. Like, we didn't go play the Powerball. Maybe we should have, but anyway, that's a discussion for another time. But I barely got that point for the fastest quali lap. I got P3 on the podium because I predicted Piastri to be there. I got the fastest overall lap time, and I got the P9 bonus pick with who got there? Go back. That would be Kimi Antonelli. All right, Cody, you finished the weekend with 2 points. You got P2 on the podium because you had Lando there. And you got the prop bet because even though you had Leclerc on your podium, you did not predict a Ferrari to be on the podium. But yeah, you hedged there and you got the prop bet there. So, but I get the weekend yet again. I've opened up a bit of a gap now. I'm up 9-5.
Yeah.
So, at least my prediction acumen is slowly getting better. But I need to listen to when I have that dark vibrating thing in my spine.
Yeah, had you listened, you could have really nailed it this weekend. I mean, for not only did you get both the quali time and the fastest lap time, but you predicted both of those times less than 0.2 away, which is pretty impressive considering how bad some of our guesses have been in the past.
Every now and again, I have a moment. Let's put it that way. It may be like a blind squirrel finding a nut, but I have a moment. Let's put it that way. All right. Well, I guess that will do it for our Italian GP recap. Cody, any final thoughts? We got a week off, and then we re-rack, and now the Baku City Circuit awaits street racing over the castle section, the long main straight, and cars always coming close to that wall. Get us excited for Azerbaijan, if you can.
Yeah, I like watching cars go around Azerbaijan. The area of the city that go around looks really cool. Lots of really cool old looking architecture. It's very ornate. And seeing the cars go around there is interesting in some parts because it's really tight. It always kind of amazed me that you managed to get a good Formula One race out of a track with so many 90-degree turns. But they make it work. Now, I will say that it's been kind of hit or miss over the last few years. There have been a couple really boring stinkers out of Azerbaijan over the last couple of years. But last year's was pretty cool. We got to see pretty much a very long duke out between Charles Leclerc trying to pass Oscar Piastri and just not quite getting there. So maybe we'll get another exciting one this year.
Yeah, I mean, if there's tension throughout, that's kind of what you always hope for with a street track is even if there's not a lot of passing necessarily, you want the ability or the opportunity to be there so that we can kind of see where this goes. Not sure who it's going to necessarily favor. I will try to get a read on that over the course of the next week, but we will see kind of where we go from here. Maybe. I know what sectors he's going to dominate. I'll tell you that. Like, here's my initial read. Red Bull going to dominate the first sector. No problem. McLaren going to dominate the castle section. Absolutely no doubt about that. Where does sector 3 end up, and what does that do to the overall lap time? Does the plus or minus in each of them negate? and we get right to it, or does one favor the other depending on what's better at that track? So we're going to find out. And I think that's the early point going into that. What do the McLarens do in reaction to the whole team order thing? I've already seen a article from race fans, Andrea Stella, saying they may reevaluate their system after this, which tells me that maybe they have understood that maybe they shouldn't have done what they did. But anyway, we will see where all of that goes. We will be here for it. It's 31 points, the driver's gap, and McLaren could wrap up their Constructors' Championship. They should make it 2 in a row for them on the bounce next time out in Azerbaijan. So we will be back with you guys for a preview episode to get you all geared up for that. If any news breaks, still waiting on a George Russell announcement. What are you waiting for, Toto? Sign the kid, for the love of God. Let's get this over and done with. Pierre Gasly got an extension over the course of the weekend. He's going to be with Alpine. There's another one that we can take off the board there. But anyway, if any other news breaks, we'll obviously do our best to bring it to you. But until then, for Cody, it's been Andy. Stay safe out there, everybody. And as always, may all your laps be fast.